This is the Too Tall Sports Podcast. Thank you for joining me as always today. My guest is Connor Brumfield. He is a financial advisor and wealth manager with Runyan Capital and their subdivision called Invested Athlete, InvestedAthletecom, where they work primarily with professional athletes and their finances and making better investment decisions. And as we talk about in the episode today, there's a lot of bad information out there, bad guidance and advisors that don't help these athletes, and they eventually, some of them go bankrupt and spend all their money, as you know about. So they're trying to change that one athlete at a time. So you can check them out, InvestedAthletecom or Runyan with an A, RunyanCapital.com as well for all the financial advice. So I feature Connor Brumfield today. He's one of the advisors and former college baseball player at Missouri, aka Mizzou. So we talk all about his college baseball career and then transitioning to a financial advisor. As always, you can find me at Too Tall Sports Podcast. That's on Instagram. You can follow me on Twitter at Too Tall Sports. I have a Facebook group. Just type in Too Tall Sports Podcast. You'll find me there. Please subscribe to my YouTube channel, Too Tall Sports Podcast. As always, you can hit the bell notification and get notified every time we drop an episode, which is Thursday mornings. And you can follow and watch the episodes as well because we do a video and audio. So if you want to watch them, it's on YouTube, Too Tall Sports Podcast. On the audio side, we're on Apple Podcasts as well, Too Tall Sports Podcast. If you're listening on Apple Podcasts, please scroll all the way down, hit the 5-star. That'd be great just to get us some more ratings and exposure just so we can grow the show. We're on Spotify as well. You can listen there. We're on Pandora. We're on Amazon Music. We're anywhere, Google Play, anywhere you get your podcast. Just type in Too Tall Sports Podcast. Without further ado, I give you my interview and conversation with Connor Brumfield, and I'll see you on the other side. Thanks. Too tall.
Going crazy.
All right, welcome back to the Too Tall Sports Podcast. My next guest is an associate wealth manager and financial advisor for Runyan Capital. He specializes in investment management for professional athletes, and you can find him and his team at InvestedAthletecom. He also played college baseball for 4 years at the University of Missouri, aka Mizzou, go Tigers. And he recently made the smart choice to move to Southern California from Missouri. He's Connor Brumfield. What's up, Connor? Thanks for being on the show, man.
Brett, great introduction. Thank you for having me. I'm excited, and let's get to it.
All right, I got you, man. Wanted to get you on the show. You got great financial advice, and I know you know working with athletes, it fits in, and you're a former baseball player, so it all works. And just off the top, I want to get your opinion on what it's been like just real lately since you moved from Missouri to working in Beverly Hills. That's got to be a culture shock. So what's it been like for you the last year or so?
Definitely a culture shock. I originally lived in West Hollywood and worked in Beverly Hills. And I'm not sure if everyone's familiar with West Hollywood, but it's a very vibrant community, very active, and busy. And coming from the Midwest, that pace was new to me.
Right.
And so that was for sure an adjustment. But I only had about 4 months of life as I knew it prior, and then COVID happened.
Right.
And so not only did life change, but business changed and really the whole world changed. And so it was a very unique transition period for me, coming out of no longer being a baseball player, starting a new career and a new place, and COVID.
Yeah, that's a lot.
So, yeah, I would say the last year has been a very interesting one, but I've learned a lot, and I think we can all figure out ways to be better for it.
Sure, definitely. And we'll get to all the stuff you're doing now, but I want to go back a little bit and kind of talk about your upbringing. So you're originally from Colombia, Missouri, very close to Mizzou's campus. Just kind of to highlight that for a minute, I didn't grow up near a big time university as a kid. Out here in Orange County, we don't have we're not close to UCLA or USC or even San Diego State. We got, where I went to Long Beach State or Fullerton, we got those kind of schools around here. So what was it like for you growing up next to a big time university with no pro sports really close to you guys? And, were you a Tiger fan from the beginning? Is that kind of what you have to be?
Well, 100%. Yeah. I could hear football games going on from my backyard if I wasn't at them. But more times than not, I was at the game. And so, from when I can remember, I would go to football games, basketball games, and baseball games. And, it was always a dream to play there in some capacity, but that reality really didn't set in until far later in my life.
Right. And I looked up your high school baseball stats, and you were a stud in high school, man. Hell of a player. I mean, USA Today, first team Missouri, third team All-American. I saw you were a Class 5A All-State in 2015. I mean, clearly you had, next level talent. So I'm assuming you had some offers or at least multiple schools to choose from, but you ended up staying home and choosing Mizzou. So did you have other offers that you were considering outside of Missouri?
Interestingly enough, no.
Okay.
Mizzou was my first offer, but they offered me before my junior year, before my junior season, which is pretty early, I felt like. And like I said, having been a Mizzou fan forever, growing up in that city, knowing that if I go there, not only, will my parents be able to go to every game, but all my grandparents, my sister, like literally anybody that knows me can go and watch me play. It was a no-brainer for me. And so I was in the office, they offered me, and then I committed on the spot right there.
Wow. Nice.
Yeah.
Okay. So, hey, you got to live a lifelong dream of playing at home. So that's really cool.
Yeah.
Not everybody gets to do that. So that's awesome. As far as, your first couple of years, I mean, you had a great start to your career. Things were trending in the right direction for you baseball wise. What do you remember about the first year or two of your baseball career at Missouri?
I think my freshman year, the thing that I most remember was just feeling really small. I felt tiny. I don't think, I was maybe in reality not that small, but I just remember everyone seemed so big and so just physical. And I was like, man, this is not high school anymore,
Yeah.
Because in high school, it was just like, whatever happens, throw it up there, I'm going to hit it.
Yeah.
Humbly. But yeah, when you go to that next level and playing in the SEC especially, you're playing against guys that are, first, second, third round draft picks, easy, every week in, week out.
Yeah.
And so my freshman year, I felt like it was a little bit of a whirlwind of just trying to wrap my head around this new level of play. And then my sophomore year, I packed on some pounds, felt a lot better physically, and really was able to settle in and kind of find my stride at that point. And it was my best season. My sophomore year was by far my best season.
There you go. Exactly. And I wanted to ask you about playing in the SEC. I know I haven't had too many of those guys on yet. So we're talking about playing against Vanderbilt, Florida, LSU, big Mississippi State, big time programs. So was that kind of what you're talking about, the wow factor? Hey, I'm going against guys that I'm going to see in the big leagues in a very, short order.
Well, yeah, 100%. I think my first SEC series, my freshman year, I was looking at the lineup card because I'd been hitting like 8th or 9th, going into SEC play. And, so my eyes just go right to the bottom of the lineup card and I don't see my name. So I'm like, guess I'm not playing today. Right. And then one of my coaches comes up and he's like, you ready? You up for it? And I'm like, for what? For sitting on the bench or what are you talking about? He's like, you're hitting leadoff. And I was like, oh, I didn't look up there. So I went back and was like, I am hitting leadoff. And it was opening weekend in Florida. I think their Friday night starter was AJ Puck, who I don't know if you remember him, but he's like a 6'6" lefty throwing 96. I hit left-handed, so I'm like, terrified a little bit.
Sure.
But that was just kind of it was almost trial by fire at that point. Like they're throwing you in, figure it out, and get it done. And I think that's really a great way to learn, but also helped me so much moving forward because, you're like, okay, I just saw 96 from the left. Like nothing can really phase me after that,
Sure.
And so I was so much more comfortable having had that experience. And then once you have 1, you have 2, you have 10, and then you just kind of roll.
Right. No, you definitely made the most out of your opportunity there. So the program had a coaching change, I believe, after your sophomore year going into your junior draft year. Is that right?
After my freshman year.
After your freshman year. Okay. So you still had a great sophomore year. And then I would want to talk about coming into your junior year, how would you describe your junior year? Everyone's getting ready in your class to get drafted. It's a big year. And then what happened?
In one word, I'd describe it as disappointing.
Okay.
Yeah, like I said, my sophomore year was strong. I think I hit like 275, and that was with finishing the season going like 6 for 69 or something. I fell off at the end. I had a little thumb injury, and it just whatever. But I had a strong sophomore year, right?
Yeah.
And so I ended up meeting with like 12 organizations after that season, and they were like, just hit 300 and above, show some pop, steal some bags, show some speed, keep doing what you're doing in the outfield. You'll be good to go. You'll get an opportunity. And that's really all I wanted. I was like, perfect. I don't care where I get drafted. As long as I get drafted, I'll go and play it out and see what happens.
Sure.
But then I hit 225 my junior year, and those calls, they didn't come, oddly enough. I don't know.
Yeah.
And so, it was a mental grind through that season, especially like, I don't know, because you go through the beginning and you're like, all right, there's still hope. Like, I'm going to turn it around. Like, it's all right. Just a slump. You get through it. But then when you hit that kind of, it's really an arbitrary number of games or whatever it is. But when you hit that moment where like, nah, I'm not turning it around. Like, I'm not going to hit over 300, or I'm not going to even hit 275 or 250.
Right.
And then you're like, oh my God, I'm going to hit 225 this year. It's tough. It's tough on the mental, and it's tough to push through. But once it was all said and done, I think it was a blessing in disguise, because it really helped me to shift my focus from, okay, baseball is everything, to now I know what it's like to really not have baseball and not feel that love that I once felt for it, and kind of broaden my horizons and figure out what I could possibly want to do next.
Sure. And I wanted to ask you about, mentally your senior year. So you come back after your junior year, had a down year. Where were you mentally senior year? Like, just as far as baseball goes and seeing other guys in the program, doing better. Where were you at?
Yeah. It was a lot of conversations with my parents, a lot of conversations with my dad. He had always been there for me throughout baseball. And what we really kind of came to was, this is likely going to be some of the last baseball games that I'll ever play, and at least I'm fortunate enough to know that this is kind of my farewell tour. So just go into it with that mindset of, I'm going to enjoy every game. I'm going to enjoy every practice, every bus ride, every plane trip, just every moment that I can, just soak it up and cherish it and enjoy it for what it is. Because the game has given me so much throughout my life. And, I would have been very disappointed if I would have spent my senior year upset or angry or disappointed or down at all, really, just because of one season in my life that I didn't perform where I thought I should have. And
I think that's awesome, man. A lot of people can't do that mentally. They're like, poor me. You need the game so much. This is my whole identity. This is all I know. And to come to that realization at 21, 22, everybody has it at some point. I had to give up the game everybody has it at some point. So at least, kudos to you for mentally handling it that way and viewing it like, hey, if I get drafted, great. But if not, I'm going to enjoy my last year of college.
Yeah. And especially for sure, I agree. But also seeing what putting all that pressure does to you, from my junior year, I saw that if I got to get drafted and do all this, clearly it didn't work.
Yeah.
And so if you keep doing the same things that don't work over and over again, I think, what is that, insanity?
Yeah, the definition of insanity, yes.
And so I was like, I'm just going to have fun. And I ended up playing pretty good, had a lot of fun, and, really was able to connect with guys on the team and kind of throughout at a different level, because I wasn't so just focused on trying to succeed and trying to get mine.
Sure. And I wanted to ask you about, did you know you were almost in the top 10 in steals in Mizzou stolen base records?
No, I had no idea.
I saw it, man. It has on your bio. It's like, hey, almost in the top 10. That's pretty cool.
How many did I have in total?
I didn't see the total number, but I just saw in your little blurb on the bio said you're close. Hey, it's pretty cool. Piece of Mizzou history. Yeah.
Almost.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I wanted to move forward to your end of your senior year. So you start to see these guys in your team get drafted. So you're starting to play with some first rounders, and it kind of started to spark the interest of, seeing what guys they're young guys with a lot of money all of a sudden, and what happens when young people have money really quickly, in a short amount of time. So how did the wheel start to turn for you as like, maybe this is interesting to me. How can I get involved in that side of the game?
Yeah. So after my sophomore year, one of my teammates got drafted in the first round. And then after my junior year, 2 guys got drafted in the first round. And so seeing them go through that, and obviously knowing what's coming on the other side, it's all public information. They're like, oh, it's signed for 1.9, 2.1, 1.24. So you're like, wow, these guys that I was just hanging out with for a couple of years and, playing ball with, they're still the same guys, but now they have millions of dollars, and then I'm like, man, who's helping them, maneuver through those scenarios and those decisions, and who's really like instilling them with the skills to maximize that money and protect that money. And so it was very intriguing for me. And so I started to do some research on it. But unfortunately, what I kept coming across was just these stories of professional athletes going into, fraud or bankruptcy or financial distress in any way. And so that really kind of lit a fire in me to want to not only be an ally, but a resource to these guys and someone that they can trust and know that, what they worked their entire lives to earn is going to be protected and looked after in the right way. And so that was really how it all came about.
Yeah, and you decide to make the move from Colombia to LA, like we talked about off the top. I mean, how did that all come about, and what went into the decision for you to, like, you've spent your whole life in Columbia, Missouri. Like, this is a big change for you. So how did that all start?
Well, I mean, I will say I'd always had this idea of, I wanted to go to LA and experience it. I watched Robin Big back in the day and Fantasy Factory. And so I was like, man, LA is great. That place looks fun, but I didn't really have any idea of, getting there or here, I suppose. But when it came to wanting to get into financial advising, getting into the business, I started to kind of poke around in my network. And what I found was, from conversations really at like Christmas, Thanksgiving, dinner, my grandparents, they kept talking about their advisor in California, and he's this great advisor. He's so knowledgeable, so trustworthy. Like, he's everything you could ever want. And so I asked my grandpa, I said, can I get his email? I want to ask him some questions and just kind of pick his brain on some things because I'm looking to get into it. And so Jeff and I, we started emailing back and forth, set up a phone interview. And then when it came time for me to graduate, he offered me an internship out here. And so originally I thought it was going to be, a 9-month post-grad internship and then kind of reassess after that. But what I found was almost immediately, we started talking about why I wanted to get in the business. He started introducing me to some agents and some managers that he knew out here that had some pretty big name clients. And then pretty much from the beginning, Invested Athletes started to kind of come together. And then after 2 months, it was like, all right, full-time offer. This is what we're going to do. And we made it happen.
That's awesome, man. I mean, way quicker than you thought, which is great. And,
Sure.
that's awesome that you were able to bet on yourself and you took a chance moving to California, and who knows what was going to happen. And even if you didn't, get the job with Jeff, you could have definitely still reassessed and, started your life there. So you at least knew you had the vision, you wanted to be there.
Yeah, I think so. And it always had been inside of me. But I couldn't have envisioned a better position and opportunity than the one I'm in now.
Right.
Because a lot of people find their way to LA, but don't always have a plan even, they're just here and ready for it. But I was fortunate enough to have a great opportunity and a great mentor and a great position to help the people that I care about a lot,
Sure. Now, when you become a financial advisor, you have to take certain tests like the Series 65 and the Series 7. So walk us through the process of, did you take those tests once you got out there? Did you have to take them before you moved over to California? What was the whole process like of getting ready for those and then eventually taking those tests that sound pretty grueling?
Yeah. Well, I guess the process starts with, taking 4 years of college, studying in school,
Sure.
And then you graduate and you're like, oh, okay, I'm done with reading. I'm just getting ready to start working. But almost immediately I was back in these thick textbooks and studying, because you have to get these credentials to be a professional.
Right.
And I took the Series 65 first. And I mean, it was probably like a, book this thick, and it's laws, regulations, securities trading, like all of these intricacies that you have to essentially know like the back of your hand. Because when you're dealing with other people's money, you got to know these things, right?
Right.
And there's a considerable amount of laws that surround dealing with other people's money, as it should be.
Yeah.
And so studied hard for months on the 65, and then passed that. And then after I took the 65, I had to take the SIE, which is the Securities Industry Essentials exam, which is a prereq for the Series 7. And then
Okay.
I'm sure, have you seen like Pursuit of Happiness or Wolf of Wall Street?
Yeah.
So that's like the Series 7, you're a licensed broker. Like, it's the test. And then,
Right.
in the industry, it's got a kind of name about it that carries some weight. And so I was like, oh man, I'm here now. I'm
Yeah.
sitting down for this. I'm taking the 7. But it was a little bit, I would say easier, but as opposed to being like a securities laws and regulations book and test, it was more just focused on, placing trades, types of orders, investment selection, creating a portfolio that's suitable for your clients. And so obviously essential information, but I thought it was a little more interesting and a lot easier to track than the 65, which is like a law book, really.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I don't know
So
if you,
yeah,
I
go
don't
ahead.
know if you know any
No, I
securities
don't know
laws,
anything
but
about
they're
stuff.
grueling.
Yeah.
They're
Yeah.
grueling.
Okay. No, I bet. So now, you're certified, you got all your test pass and everything, and you wanted to work primarily with pro athletes, but tell us maybe why you don't want to work with us regular, or, not me, because I'm a former athlete, but the regular folk, I guess, regular people, as far as their finances, and why you want to specialize with pro athletes.
Well, I will say I never don't want to work with
Of
someone.
course.
Obviously, if we're a right fit for one another, then
Sure.
we would love to work with you.
Right. Your
I
main
think,
focus is athletes. Yeah.
right. So Jeff, I mean, the office itself, Jeff has
Yeah.
built a strong reputation and a proven track record of working with high net worth individuals that are, as you say, just regular folk.
Right.
Accumulated wealth over long careers, and they have a nest egg that they want to live off of and retire on. And that's who he's built his business around.
Right.
And so we do work with them for sure. But me being, coming from a sports background, I had that connection with those guys. I saw them. I literally played with guys that signed for multi-millions of dollars, and
Right.
I didn't know, who was helping them handle that. And it just, I don't know. And then reading those stories, it was like, if I can get one guy to not have an outcome like the ones that you read about, I'll feel so fulfilled, because I know what they went through and how hard they worked. And that's always the goal. Like, you can say that you love, but like when you dream of playing in the bigs, what comes with that as well. And to see that, the financial side of it, just kind of disappear and be flushed away from bad decisions or bad guidance, I mean, that has to be very frustrating and disheartening. And so for me, if I can be the resource and the one that's helping them and guiding them to make those right decisions, that's so fulfilling for me, because I know what they went through to get that money and earn, that wealth.
Sure.
So,
And I want to come back to Invested Athlete in a second, but let's talk about maybe some of the statistics that were alarming to you that you found about, a lot of people know about people, athletes going bankrupt, or how short, like the NFL stands for not for long, right? So these things happen. What did you find when you were looking up some of these numbers about the failure rate of athletes and their money?
Yeah. So it was a 2009 Sports Illustrated article that I kept popping up. Literally, it was just everywhere. But it was quoted as saying 78% of NFL players file for bankruptcy or face financial distress 2 years after retiring. And
That's
then
crazy.
78%. Like, that's a lot.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then 60% of NBA players file for bankruptcy or face financial distress 5 years after retiring. And then the last one was MLB players file for bankruptcy at 4 times the national average. So you're seeing the 3 major sports in the US all having an overrepresentation of financial distress amongst their employees / players. But when you compare what they make to the average American, they're making a lot more.
Yeah.
And so what it really comes down to is you can't out earn bad habits or bad advice, you know? And so if I could just fix that part of it and help them, give them the resources they need, give them the advice they need to make the right decisions that they won't look back on and be upset with, then the guys that work with us, they're not going to be part of that statistic. And so that was really what grabbed my attention, was like, okay, I got to do something about this.
No, that's awesome that you're willing to take that on, because I mean, those numbers are pretty staggering, right? You think, oh, they got all the money in the world, but it happens way too often that it's just gone. They make bad investments. They listen to the wrong people, like you said. So that's
Right.
how Invested Athlete was born. So then I wanted to ask you about that. Like, not what are people getting per se, but like, what are, you and your team, you guys built InvestedAthletecom. So what's that all about?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I kind of touched on it a little bit, but, Jeff, having built such a reputation and a proven track record of working with these high net worth individuals, having them achieve their goals, but also just long-term financial success in general. It was a realization of, if these people can do this, you don't have to reinvent the wheel. You just have to apply some of those philosophies and that investment approach to these athletes and really kind of illustrate to them the power that they have and harness it, and then they'll have the same outcomes. So it's really like, our mission is to reframe the narrative for professional athletes and their finances, but it's by helping them to act and invest and achieve similar to our high net worth clients that you would say are the regular folk.
Right.
Because
Now,
the regular folk, they're not running out of money.
Right.
They're
not spending maybe as much as some of these athletes are.
Maybe they're not spending as much. Maybe they're not donating as much, or maybe they're not investing in as many car washes or other things that, you could see that people of high profile, they just get approached with more opportunities.
Right.
And not every opportunity is a good opportunity.
Right.
And so if you can have someone that says, okay, well, let's look at this, see if it makes sense, and if it's in line with your actual, financial well-being, then we can do it. But a lot of guys don't have that person in their corner.
Right.
And so they need it.
And you're not just doing NFL players. You're also, just because I was a former minor leaguer, you also take care of, multiple sports, whatever the athlete, whatever stage of their career they're at, right?
Yeah. We would like to say we are agnostic when it comes to the sport.
Okay.
And even the occupation. It's really like, whatever you do, as long as you are, in line with kind of how we view money management and investment management, and we work well together, then we'd be happy to help and have a conversation.
Sure. And as far as going after players, what's it been like in the past year, maybe during a pandemic per se, or just trying to find people that fit you guys and they, you fit them? What's it been like going after players and trying to help them financially and jump on board with you guys?
Yeah. You can speak to this as well, but it's harder to connect over the phone or over Zoom than it would be if, I'm in person with you at a game or getting a bite to eat afterwards,
Yeah.
So I definitely feel like I missed out on that, or just that everyone missed out on that.
Sure.
And I think, like, I was literally in the car on my way to spring training last year when they canceled it.
Yeah. It's hard.
Yeah. So an extra 4-hour drive, but, but yeah, so you had to be creative over the past year in ways of getting in front of these guys, connecting with them. And we're in an industry where it should be based off of trust and mutual understanding. And so creating that through either a Zoom or a phone call is challenging.
Right.
But what I've found is, if you can connect with the guys, but also if they have an agent, connect with the agent And then once the whole group is really a witness to and is seeing kind of what we're doing and how it's in their best interest and helping them, then everyone's on board, and that not only solidifies that relationship, but introduces more to us as well.
My next question was going to be about agents, because it seems like they're kind of the gatekeepers, right? They're the secret sauce to get to these players. As long as you can not sell them, but show them the vision of what you guys do, and just see if they're on board, you have a much better chance of getting those athletes. So what's it been like talking to agents, and how responsive are they? Do they, some of them have their own in-house financial, not a lot of them, but some of them do. So what's it been like for you guys going after the agents?
Yeah, I think, just like anybody, some are more receptive to you, and others won't answer their phones.
Right. Yeah.
But it's definitely true. They are the gatekeeper for a lot of these guys, especially younger guys, just because the agents have gone through the process with other clients, so they know who to call if they're looking for, to get their car shipped to spring training, or if they're looking for an advisor. They have that ability to reach out to somebody and get that done. And so, if you can, and it was a focus for me was, find agents that are, diligent in their work with their clients, that they want the best for their clients, and they take care of their clients, because that's what we do. And so if we align with those guys, then they know that the player knows that any recommendation coming from them is going to be in line with how their agent treats them in their best interest.
Right.
And so what we found, if you can, show everyone that's involved in the situation that that's how we act. We are straightforward. We're trustworthy. We reflect well on them for making the introduction. Then those agents are much more prone to making those referrals.
Right. And as far as like the kind of questions you guys get, or some common things that come up to, like, why go with you guys per se, or what are you guys seeing out there, or what maybe tips you have for selecting a financial advisor, a financial group like yourselves? What are the common things you're hearing out there?
Yeah, I think just the first thing, make sure that they're knowledgeable and trustworthy right off the bat. Have those conversations with them that are maybe uncomfortable, but make it uncomfortable for them. Ask your advisor any question you can think of, anything that you would ever want to be answered, ask it. And if they can't answer it, that's a red flag.
Right.
Literally whatever you want, ask it.
Yeah.
How they get paid, what do they like, what are they investing in? When can I have access to my funds? Can I have access to my funds? Which, yes, you should.
Sure.
And they should have those answers readily available, and given to you. And I would say, especially on how they get compensated, make sure that that's mutually understood before you sign anything.
Right.
And even asking them if they act as a fiduciary to you, which a fiduciary is just someone that is obligated to act in your best interest at all times. We'd like to think that that's always the case, but it's not.
Right.
And so having that mutual understanding of, okay, you are a fiduciary to me, which means my best interest is always going to be first. That should be discussed and illustrated very clearly between both parties before anything is decided upon.
Sure. There's been a huge rise this past year. People, trying to put their money in different places. So there's been a big rise in cryptocurrency. Some players have requested to be paid in Bitcoin, as we've seen in the NFL already. Where do you see this going? What are your thoughts on crypto? And is that, do you see yourself, adopting it into your strategy, or talking to players about it? What's been the talk about crypto for you guys?
Are you referring to Russell Okun?
Yes.
Half of his
salary in Bitcoin. I mean, it's definitely a bold move, but I mean, it's very forward thinking, and that maybe is where we're going. So that's why I wanted to get your thoughts on that.
Yeah. Have you seen his Bitcoin website that he has?
No, I haven't.
Yeah. So he has a full website dedicated to Bitcoin and crypto education, promotion. I think you can even purchase some cryptos on his website.
Oh, wow.
And the reason I'm referencing this is because he is obviously a very unique case of someone that is not only a supporter of crypto, but he is well versed in it.
Sure.
And I think that is important for anybody to understand whenever they're looking at, say, a younger NFL player. It's like, well, he, turned half of his salary into Bitcoin, and instead of being paid 13 million, it was 21 million this year because of the increase in Bitcoin price. But that was a calculated decision that Russell made. And he was very understanding of what crypto is, the risk associated with it, and why it makes sense for him. And that's really all that I can ask for if someone wants to make that decision.
Sure.
In any investment, really. Just understand the risks, rewards, and if it makes sense for you.
He's
Russell,
also been in the league for a long time, so he's already made enough money to where he can take a risk like that. For maybe a young guy.
Yes, exactly. So he's made over $72 million in total,
right.
just from playing. And so if you take half of your $13 million at $6.5 million, that's less than 10% of his career earnings invested into Bitcoin.
Sure.
Right. And so if you look at that as like a hypothetical portfolio, you have, a little sliver put into this speculative, volatile investment vehicle.
Right.
But the rest, I mean, you would think, is structured in a way to compensate for that risk. On the other side, if you have a third or fourth year player who's like, oh, I'm going to put half of my, $1 million contract into Bitcoin. Also, my first 3 years, I didn't save anything and I, spent. So now you have a portfolio split in half of 50% in a highly speculative and volatile investment, and then the other 50% in cash or other vehicles that you would like to think are diversified throughout. And so it's the younger player or generation that is potentially going to expose themselves to too much risk by not understanding the circumstances that, some of these older, more developed, established guys are in, that's allowing them to make those decisions.
And what do you think about, there's been a lot of what they call YOLO trades this year, with just people, getting on Robinhood and the young people, I don't know if any of your athletes have already talked to you about that or not, but, guys are starting to invest on their own a little bit, maybe with lack of education. We kind of just talked a little bit about that, but what are your thoughts on, the GameStop thing went crazy, just stuff like that. And there's just a lot of young people getting in the investment game that have no clue how this all works. So what are your thoughts on how it's gone over the past year as far as young people investing money in the stock market?
Yeah, I will always be a fan of people expressing interest in investing and in the markets. I loved that Robinhood, prior to them making some decisions, was that they were going to democratize investing for everyone, bring it to everyone and not just make it seem like this, ivory tower Manhattans are the only ones that can, it should be for everyone. It's a great opportunity to grow and make your money work for you. But on the other side, you should make sure that you understand, what you're exposing yourself to and kind of how markets work. I think over this past year, there could be a disillusion as to how the stock market moves. Just because in reality, we're hitting, I feel like, a market high every day almost, And so if you got in after that big dip in March of 2020, it's really only been just a rise from there,
Yeah.
And so I think a lot of people are starting to think, if they joined during this time, they're like, why have I not done this forever? Because the market only goes up,
Yeah.
And I like to say, if you look outside, how many trees are all the way up into the sky? Not everything grows forever. There's a ceiling to it all. And so you want to make sure that whatever you're doing, that you understand the risks that could potentially come up and present themselves. And when they do, it can be pretty fast at times.
And they say like everybody's a genius during a bull market,
Exactly. Yeah, including us, but it's very true.
Yeah.
It's very true. And that's when we've been in a tear really since the bottom of March of last year. And I'm not saying that I don't think it's going to continue for a while, but
Sure.
but markets come in cycles, and you should always be cognizant of that and prepared, at least with some sort of downside, protection. And I think that the YOLOers don't necessarily have that established in their portfolios. But, as long as they're comfortable with the amount of risk they're taking, then get in the markets. I mean, I love the stock market.
Right. So do I. No, I'm with you. And just real quick, I don't normally do this, but I want to explain what YOLO means to the older generation if people are listening. It's you only
Do it.
live once. So it's
That's
kind of like
right.
a moonshot trade. So I have to do it for the older generation.
There you go. Yeah.
I'm sure my dad's listening to this at some point. Let's talk about Jeff Runyan, the chief executive manager of Runyan Capital. He's created a very successful business there in Beverly Hills, and his motto is "Discipline makes the difference." And I saw that all over the website that you guys have, and I'm a believer in that phrase as well. No matter what you're doing, discipline is so important, and being prepared and all that stuff. So what have you learned from Jeff since you started working with him now that you're out there? And maybe what is that quote, discipline makes the difference? What's that, how do you guys live by that in the office?
Yeah. From day one, it was on the website. I saw that when I was coming out here, but from day one, this is our motto. This is what we live by, not only in how we do our work and how we go about our lives, but when it comes to our clients as well. We want to make sure that we are disciplined in their approach with their investments, the construction of their portfolio, and also the due diligence that comes with, selecting the proper investments for our clients. But just from a professional standpoint, being in the office with him and watching the way that he works and goes about business in general, the discipline that he carries is I feel unmatched in any kind of experience, even going through athletics. And he was an athlete himself. He did a lot of triathlons and marathons, and I think he was a very good swimmer back in the day as well. And so, he just discipline, it really does make the difference for him. But it's not in just one aspect of his work or life, it's in all. And I think that's another factor to discipline. If you have it instilled in you, it permeates throughout anything that you do. And it really shines through in the quality of work that you put out and the consistency as to which you work.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you. As far as, now we're kind of getting out of the pandemic, the future of InvestedAthlete.com, what's your goals maybe, coming out of 2020, now we're in 2021, what you guys are trying to do, build out the website, build out your client roster. So what's it look like moving forward for Invested Athlete?
Yeah. We got the NFL draft in 6 days. And so been talking with a few guys that are likely to get picked up there. Hopefully they're going to fall where we think they will. And, it was my goal to have one guy in that draft, and I'm pretty confident that I've got a couple there.
Nice.
But then, that it doesn't stop there. It's making sure that you're doing right by them and following up with them. And so that if they have a guy that they played in college with, got drafted, went somewhere else, but they're wanting to have a conversation. The more people that we can help, the better off that everyone is, really.
Sure.
And so I haven't set exact goals by number on this year's MLB draft yet, but I know that'll be coming up pretty quick as well. We got a couple of guys that we've talked with over the past year on that. And then for some of my minor league guys, I'm just hoping that they get up to the bigs this year.
Definitely. It'd be good for everybody.
That's a lifelong dream for them, and it'd be so cool to experience it. On this side, just being able to share that moment with them. Because obviously I wish I had that moment, but
sure, we all do.
Yeah. But I'm excited about that. And then it's really just continuing to spread the mission and trying to be this resource to these guys, because like I said, not everyone has that. And if we can save one, I'll feel better about it.
There you go. And so where can everybody find you guys or reach out to you if they want to work with you or just have general questions about finances and stuff like that? So where can everybody find you?
Yeah. RunyanCapital.com, RUNYAN capital.com, InvestedAthlete.com. I'm on Instagram, LinkedIn, Connor Brumfield, CONNOR. And give us a call at the office. I'll be here 310-882-6496.
I like it. That's awesome, man. Any last words before we go?
Brett, I appreciate you having me. It was a great time. I really am looking forward to more episodes, watching you grow this thing out, because I think of the 2 podcasts I've been on so far, it flowed well. You definitely know what you're doing. You do your due diligence, and I like that a lot. So big things coming out of Brett Too Tall podcast.
There you go.
It's coming.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it. It's all about discipline, right? It makes a difference.
It does make the difference.
There you go.
Showed that.
I'm glad I was the best. 1 out of 2. I'll take it,
That's right. Yeah. I got another one coming soon, though, so we'll see.
Good. Okay. We'll see if they live up to me.
That's right.
Thank you, Connor. I appreciate it, man. Best of luck to you as well, and InvestedAthletecom, and I'm pulling for you guys as well, so I hope everything goes well.
Perfect. Thanks, Brett. I appreciate it.
My thanks to Connor Brumfield. Hope you guys enjoyed that episode, and a lot of staggering numbers about athletes and how things go after their careers. So if anybody has any financial questions, or you need advice, or anybody that's an athlete that's looking to have someone take care of their finances, please go to InvestedAthletecom or RunyanCapital.com. You can talk to Jeff, who's the chief executive manager. You can talk to Connor, who I just had on the episode, and they'll guide you in the right direction. So my thanks to Connor and InvestedAthlete.com. As always, you can follow me at Too Tall Sports Podcast. That's on Instagram. You can follow the show there. Comment, drop me a DM, let me know what you think of the show. And I post clips there all the time just to preview each episode. So check me out over there at Too Tall Sports Podcast. On Twitter, it's at Too Tall Sports. Go over to our Facebook page. You can find me there, Too Tall Sports Podcast. Please subscribe on our YouTube channel. Trying to build that base out a little bit, and hit the bell notification so you get notified every time we drop an episode, which is Thursday mornings. So go over to Too Tall Sports Podcast on YouTube. Same thing on Apple Podcast. You can find me there. If you could, scroll all the way down if you haven't done that already. Find those 5 stars, and if you want to drop a comment, even better, leave a review. But definitely hit the 5-star. It's real easy. It takes 2 seconds. We're also on Spotify, Amazon Music, Pandora. We're on Google Play. Everywhere you get your podcast, just type in Too Tall Sports Podcast. Thank you for listening, and I'll see you next week for another great episode. Have a good one.